this legislation and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What happened in Colorado, as the gentleman referenced, was wrong as wrong could be. We all understand that. But you know what else is wrong? The 100 churches and crisis pregnancy centers that were attacked in the aftermath of the Dobbs decision. Actually, when the leak happened, dozens and dozens of those attacks happened between the leak of the opinion and the opinion itself, all designed to intimidate the Supreme Court. And what did this body do? While that was happening and Supreme Court Justices' homes were being protest, harassed, all kinds of things said about their family, an assassination attempt on one of those justices, Justice Kavanaugh, what did this body do? They waited a month to pass legislation to give our highest court members the protection they needed. This body did that. So look, there is no place for violence, but let's be clear. Let's condemn all of it. Let's do what we can to protect it, and let's not stay on this concerted effort to intimidate the court. By the way, Madam Speaker, we have yet to have a hearing on the leak of the Dobbs decision. But in an hour and 15 minutes, we are going to have a hearing on the fake leak that was brought up about Justice Alito in the Hobby Lobby case. Why can't we get to the bottom of what happened earlier this year with the Dobbs decision that resulted in all that violence, over 100 churches and crisis pregnancy centers attacked? I'd like to have a hearing on that. I hope at some point the chairman will. We will look into doing that next year when we convene the new Congress. That I reserve. I'd be happy to yield.
I just want to make it clear. You indicated that we did nothing. The justices of the Supreme Court had full protection. The issue was families and the families of members. But you're not to be on the public record.
Reclaiming my time, and I respect the majority leader reclaiming my time.
From Ohio
the fact is, the Senate passed the bill, and you guys waited a month before we passed it on the House floor, and you know that's accurate.
If the gentleman will continue to yield, you represented that the justices were unprotected. That is not accurate, sir.
Justices' families, exactly right. Justices' family. I will correct that.
Thank
but
you
guys waited a month to do that when they were being threatened. That's my point. With that, I reserve the balance of our time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. You know, I've been listening to this debate on the Republican side, and it's self-contradictory. On the one hand, don't worry about it. Obergefell is not threatened. It's the law of the land. The Supreme Court has decided it. There's no threat. You guys are exaggerating the threat to Obergefell. On the other hand, this bill is catastrophic. My God, it'll change things. Well, how will it change things if Obergefell is going to keep going? This bill will threaten the institution of marriage somehow. Really? I don't think it'll threaten the institution of marriage, especially since it's irrelevant, since Obergefell is going to continue. You can't argue out of both sides of your mouth. So I'd also point out, as I will in my closing statement, that contrary to the fears expressed about religious liberty, almost every church group in the United States has endorsed this bill. I'll read a list in my closing statement. Is she here? Yes. And I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished Speaker of the House, Ms. Pelosi.
For 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your leadership. I rise today in strong support for the Respect of Marriage Act, an historic step forward in Democrats' fight to defend the dignity and equality of every American. Let us salute those who have legislated and advocated relentlessly to make this bill the law of the land. Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Jerry Nadler, Equality Caucus Chair David Cicilline, and all of the members of the Equality Caucus, and the grassroots activists out there, without whose mobilization so many pieces of legislation to expand freedom in our country would not be possible. I say that because when I came to this floor 35 years ago, my first speech on the floor after I was sworn in was to talk about, say that I came here to fight HIV and AIDS. What I learned after that is that we had to fight against discrimination against people with HIV and AIDS. Two people who were so significant in that are Phyllis and Del Martin and Phyllis Lyons, champions in our country. Well, I'll talk about that in a moment. First, I want to salute the Senate for its strong bipartisan legislation under leadership of Chuck Schumer and Senator Tammy Baldwin, and the bipartisan strong support that this House gave the legislation to send it over to the Senate. Marriage equality has been a law across our country since 2015, and proudly even longer in the state of California. Indeed, my thoughts today are with Phyllis Lyon and Del Martin, two dear friends and iconic trailblazers. I've brought their picture to the floor time and time again to talk about freedom and dignity and respect so many times. Nearly 2 decades ago, their enduring love made history as they joyfully said their vows in San Francisco City Hall, the first. In the years since, the same euphoria has blessed couples and bonded families in every corner of America. And yet, since the Supreme Court's monstrous decision overturning Roe v. Wade, right-wing forces have set their sights on this basic personal freedom. In his concurring opinion, Clarence Thomas explicitly called on the court to reconsider its ruling in Obergefell. While his legal reasoning is twisted and unsound, we must take Justice Thomas at his word and the hateful movement behind him at their word. We must act now on a bipartisan, bicameral basis to combat bigoted extremism and uphold the inviolability of same-sex and interracial marriages. Once signed into law, the Respect for Marriage Act will help prevent right-wing extremists from upending the lives of loving couples, traumatizing kids across the country, and turning back the clock on hard-won progress. This legislation takes several steps to uphold marriage equality under federal law. First, it tears the bigoted, unconstitutional Defense of Marriage Act off the books for good. When that bill was passed, our colleagues understood that it was not constitutional. Why else would they have tried to strip the judicial review of Defense of Marriage Act if they thought it could take the test of judicial review? Today's vote will codify a legal reality already handed down by the Supreme Court and ensure DOMA can never again be used to justify hateful discrimination. Second, the Respect for Marriage Act will enshrine married couples' right to equal protection under federal law, from tax filings to Social Security to bereavement and veterans' benefits. Third, this legislation will require that every state recognizes all valid out-of-state marriages, regardless of any heinous restrictions imposed by particular state law. This legislation is the latest step in House Democrats' fight to win full equality for LGBTQ Americans and forge a more perfect union that our children and their children, all of our children, deserve. Fighting alongside tireless advocates, we transformed the fight against HIV/AIDS here at home and around the world. And I thank President Bush for his leadership in that regard as well. All of our presidents, well, up until a certain point. We tossed don't ask, don't tell into the dustbin of history. We enacted fully inclusive federal hate crimes legislation, including Americans from the Scourge of Bigoted Violence with the Matthew Shepard Act. And our friend Barney Frank, our former colleague, is here, was so instrumental in passing that legislation. And today, we will include marriage equality into federal law now and for generations to come. I'm just going to speak personally for a moment because, as I mentioned earlier, my first words on the floor of this House were about fighting against HIV and AIDS and the discrimination that goes with that. My final bill as Speaker the first time, one of the final bills that I signed was the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And now one of the final bills that I will sign in the enrollment will be this beautiful legislation, the Respect for Marriage Act that we are passing today. Today, we stand up for the values the vast majority of Americans hold dear, a belief in the dignity, beauty, and divinity, spark of divinity in every person, an abiding respect for love so powerful that it binds two people together. San Francisco's, when we talk about freedom, I think of Harvey Milk. He once told his supporters, "I have tasted freedom. I will not give up that which I have tasted." Yes, today this chamber proudly stands with forces of freedom, not going back, and justice. Mr. Speaker, I urge a resounding bipartisan aye vote in favor of the Respect for Marriage Act in loving memory of Del Martin and Phyllis Lyons, my dear friends and iconic pioneers, and urge a strong bipartisan vote. Now you're back. Thank you.
The chair will remind all persons in the gallery that they are here as guests of the House, and any manifestation of approval or disapproval of proceedings is in violation of House rules. Gentleman from New York is recognized. Gentleman from New York reserves. Gentleman from Ohio. Gentleman from Ohio reserves.
We're prepared to close.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would urge a no vote based on the arguments we've made on the floor today. I think this is, I'm just urging no vote. I think this is the wrong way to go. And with that, we yield back the balance of our time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the Senate amendment to the Respect for Marriage Act represents a carefully negotiated compromise that maintains all of the bill's substantive protections for marriage equality while affirming that the religious liberty and conscience protections available under current law remain unaffected by the bill. For these reasons, leading national organizations have endorsed the bill as amended by the Senate, including the ACLU, GLAAD, PFLAG, Human Rights Campaign, and Lambda Legal. In addition, a broad interfaith coalition that includes the Interfaith Alliance, the Episcopal Church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, the United Church of Christ, the Presbyterian Church USA Office of Public Witness, the Union for Reform Judaism, the Anti-Defamation League, the Hindu American Foundation, Muslims for Progressive Values, and the Sikh Coalition all endorse the Senate amendment to this bill. This is a long overdue bill, and I urge my colleagues to support it with a big vote, and I yield back the balance of my time.
All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 1510, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Nadler. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. For what purpose? Okay. Oh, Mr. Mayor. For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We'd ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All members seeking a vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number have arisen. The yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Hampshire seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as member designated by Mr. Kildee, Ms. Axney, and Mr. O'Halloran, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Bass of California, I inform the House that Ms. Bass will vote yes on H.404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island again seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member by Mr. Swazi of New York, I inform the House that Mr. Swazi will proudly vote yes on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Jacobs of New York, I inform the House Mr. Jacobs will vote yea on H.R. 8404.
Gentleman from Texas, for what purposes, gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Speaker Maloney, as the person designated by Mr. Lee Gomer of the great state of Texas, Ms. Paul Goes of the great state of Arizona, inform the House they will both vote no on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Rupersberger, I inform the House that Mr. Rupersberger will vote yes on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. As the member designated by Representative Williams of Georgia, I inform the House that she will vote yea on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a member designated by Mr. Lawson, inform the House that he will vote yes on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Ann Kirkpatrick, Peter DeFazio, Albio Ceres, Donald Payne, Peter Welch, Dina Titus, Mike Doyle, Eddie Bernice Johnson, and Bill Pascrell, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Lawrence, I inform the House that Ms. Lawrence will vote yes on H.R. 8404. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, member designated by Congress members Maureen Newman, Grace Napolitano, Eric Swalwell, Mary Peltola, and Kai Kahili, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Baird of Indiana, I inform the House Mr. Baird will vote nay on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated for Ms. Jamie Herrera Butler from Washington, I inform the House that Ms. Herrera Butler will vote yea on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, as a member designated by Mr. Huffman, I inform the House that Mr. Huffman will vote yes on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
As a member designated by Mr. Meeks, I inform the House that he will vote yes on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Gibbs of Ohio, I inform the House that Mr. Gibbs will vote nay on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Brooks of Alabama, Mr. Long of Missouri, and Mr. Palazzo of Mississippi, I inform the House that all three members will vote nay on H.R. 8404. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition?
As a member designated by Mr. Mike Johnson of Louisiana, I inform the House that Mr. Johnson will vote no on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as member designated by Mr. Gonzalez of Ohio, I inform the House that Mr. Gonzalez will vote yea on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Presley, Ms. Hayes, I inform the House that these two members will vote yes on H.R. 8404, and Ms. Beatty as well. Ms. Beatty, Ms. Presley, Ms. Hayes. I thank the Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Idaho seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a member designated by Mr. Mike Simpson of Idaho's 2nd District, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House Mr. Simpson will vote yes on H.R. 8404. And, Mr. Speaker, also as a member designated by Mr. Johnson of Ohio's 6th District, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House Mr. Johnson will vote no on H.R. 8404.
does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Liu, Ms. Wexton, and Mr. Yarmouth, I inform the House that these three members will vote yes on H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of member designated by Mr. Rush, I inform the House that Mr. Rush will vote yes on H.R. 8404.
On this vote, the yeas are 258, the nays are 169, present 1. The motion is adopted. I was emotional, I'm sorry. Let's see.
Is in violation of the rules of the House. For what purpose? Oh. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. And for what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, I object.
Objection is heard. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
The desk.
Clerk will report the motion.
Of Colorado moves to reconsider the vote on concurring in the Senate amendment to H.R. 8404.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I have a motion at the desk.
Clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Cicilline of Rhode Island moves to lay the motion to reconsider on the table.
The question now occurs on the motion to table. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion is not adopted. Gentleman from Texas.
I request the yeas and nays.
Yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered, and members will record their votes by electronic device. This 15-minute vote. This is the gentleman from New Jersey rise.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Ann Kirkpatrick, Peter DeFazio, Albio Series, Donald Payne, Peter Welch, Gina Titus, Mike Doyle, Eddie Bernice Johnson, and Bill Pascrell, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on the motion to table.
what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Huffman, I inform the House that Mr. Huffman will vote yes on the motion to table.
What purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Bass of California, Mr. Swazi of New York, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from New York rise?
As the member designated by Mr. Meeks, I inform the House that he will vote yes on the motion to table.
What purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, as member designated by Mr. Rush, Ms. Wexton, and Mr. Liu, I inform the House that these three members will vote yes on the motion, putting the motion on the table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Beatty, Ms. Presley, and Ms. Hayes, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on the motion to table.
For what purposes, the gentleman from New Hampshire rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Kildee of Michigan, Mr. O'Halloran of Arizona, and Ms. Axney of Iowa, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on the motion to table.
For what purposes, the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Gibbs of Ohio, I inform the House that Mr. Gibbs will vote no on the motion.
For what purposes, the gentleman from New York rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Jacobs of New York, I inform the House Mr. Jacobs will vote yea on the motion.
For what purposes, the gentleman from Utah rise?
Madam Speaker, as member designated by Mr. Gonzalez of Ohio, I inform the House that Mr. Gonzalez will vote yea on the motion.
For what purposes, the gentlelady from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Lawrence, I inform the House that Ms. Lawrence will vote no on the motion to table.
Gentlelady from Texas.
Yes, I incorrectly stated she votes no. It's a yes vote.
I thank
Ms.
the gentlelady.
Lawrence, thank you. Thank you so much.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Ruppersberger, I inform the House that Mr. Ruppersberger will vote yes on the motion to table.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated for Ms. Jamie Herrera Butler from Washington, I inform the House that Ms. Butler will vote yea on the motion.
Good morning, everyone. What a great day, isn't it? Aren't we happy to be here? My neighbors. As our colleagues gather, may I thank you all, not only for being here, but being there on this issue for such a long time. At last, we have history in the making. But not only are we on the right side of history, we're on the right side of the future, expanding freedom in America. So I'm honored to be here with Leader Schumer, who's on his way. You'll be hearing from Representative Cicilline, Senator Baldwin, Rep. Nadler, and our wrap-up. We're honored to welcome over on the House side Senator Collins. Thank you, Senator Collins. As we shall we say, anticipating Leader Schumer, may I just introduce some of our members. Sharice Davids of Kansas, Angie Craig of Minnesota, the newly engaged Chris Pappas of New Hampshire, Richie Torres of New York, Chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, Mark Takano of California. David Cicilline, I mentioned already, one of the chairs of the Equality Caucus, the sponsor of the Equality Act, which we have yet to do. Mr. Cicilline, thank you. Of course, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, Jerry Nadler. Thank you, Jerry. And our member of the leadership from New York, Sean Patrick Maloney. When they said he was on his way, I thought they meant from his office. Oh, he's here. I didn't know whether it was from Brooklyn or from the Senate side or what. And let us welcome back to the House side our former colleague here, this one we're so proud of, Mr. Leader Chuck Schumer. This is an emotional day for many of us here. I see some of my neighbors from San Francisco here, and as I spoke on the floor, I referenced, you can come up here now. If you wish, or you can sit.
We're about the same height.
We've been working together for a long time, so what passes for humor in the Senate side, not necessarily.
It took me 12 years to get her to laugh at my jokes.
He said plural. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about plural. But anyway, it is a happy day. As I said on the floor, and I had the picture of Phyllis and Dell, just two wonderful San Franciscans who were the first to be married in San Francisco when Mayor Gavin Newsom, then Mayor Gavin Newsom, instituted this in our city. And I also want to mention Jim Hormel, who was the chair of my campaign when I ran for Congress, and I officiated at his wedding. The three of them are shining down on us from heaven. Today, Congress sends the Respect for Marriage Act to the President's desk, a glorious triumph of love and freedom. Let us salute those who've legislated and advocated relentlessly to make this bill the law of the land. Mr. Chairman, Jerry Nadler, Equality Chair David Cicilline, and all of his tireless co-chairs of that caucus on the House side, Leader Chuck Schumer, and they were all applauded earlier. So Senator Tammy Baldwin, formerly of the House as well. And again, to welcome to the House side, Senator Collins. Senator Collins, thank you. Again, her presence here is a statement to the bipartisan, bicameral support this legislation has. Today, we stand against an urgent threat, and we succeeded, for the values that our nation holds dear. Since the monstrous Dobbs decision, right-wing forces have set their sights on more of America's personal freedoms, including the right to marry the person you love. Our history has always been about expanding freedom until that decision. We are privileged to be joined by Judith Casson Windsor, the loving wife of iconic trailblazer late Edith Windsor. Wave the book, wave the book, there's the book. Thank you for honoring us with your presence and for serving us with your courage, and we miss Edith. Yeah. Yes, and here we are. Now this time should make it work. Edith Windsor once said of marriage, for anybody who doesn't understand why we want it, we need it. It is magic, she said. It is magic. This legislation honors that magic, protecting it from bigoted extremism, defending the inviolability of the same-sex and interracial marriages. The Respect for Marriage Act takes key steps to uphold marriage equality under federal law. This is what we're celebrating. Tearing down the Defense of Marriage Law, taking off the books for good. Enshrining married couples' right to equal protection. Requiring that every state recognize all valid marriages out of state as long as it is recognized in the state of their marriage. The legislation reflects Democrats' belief in the dignity, beauty, and divinity of every person. And you may know the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell was one of my final, Chuck, I was saying this too, one of the final bills that I signed as Speaker the first time around, December 2010, was the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So you can just imagine how exciting it is at this point, at the end of this term as Speaker, to be signing the Respect for Marriage Act. And with that, I want to yield to our former colleague in the House, a champion on these issues. Remember when we did HOPWA, Housing Opportunity for People with AIDS? So many years of service to the community, for our country, for freedom. Distinguished Leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer.
No matter where she stands, her stature is always enormous. Wow, this is a great day. Now, for millions of Americans, today is a very good day, an important day, a day that's been a long time in coming. We are sending the Respect for Marriage Act to the President's desk. Today, the long but inexorable march towards greater equality takes a very important step forward. Because of our work together, the rights of millions of LGBTQ Americans will be strengthened under federal law. As I've said many times, the Respect for Marriage Act is deeply personal to many of us in the Congress, many of us here, and certainly to me. My wife and I are so proud that our daughter and her wife are expecting their first child, my third grandchild, in the new year. Today, thanks to the tireless advocacy of many in this room, and the dogged work by many of my colleagues, my grandchild will live in a world that will respect and honor their mother's marriage. So yes, this is about millions of LGBTQ Americans in the country, but countless other lives of children and families will also be impacted as well. This legislation is a chance to send a message to Americans everywhere. No matter who you are, who you love, you too deserve dignity and equal treatment under the law. Under the law. That's about as an American ideal as it gets. I want to thank everyone from both chambers who shepherded this bill to the finish line. And of course, I thank Speaker Pelosi and Representative Cicilline and my good friend Jerry Nadler. On the Senate side, I want to thank once again Senators Sinema and Baldwin, as well as Collins and Tillis and Portman. Their work has been magnificent, and I'm so thankful they stayed the course, even when success seemed elusive. Pushing respect for marriage over the finish line required patience and persistence. Today, it's paying off. Most of all, thank you to the American people, the vast majority of whom have understood that the inexorable march towards equality is at the core of the American being. You made this bill possible, America. You made change happen, America. Because of you, the American people, we are taking one step closer to fulfilling our mission of a more perfect union. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is David Cicilline. I chair the Equality Caucus in the House and represent the great state of Rhode Island. And I have the privilege of speaking today on behalf of all of the co-chairs of the Equality Caucus. First, to say thank you to everyone in this room. Today is a great day and a day for extraordinary celebration for our community. For the first time in a decade, we're sending a major LGBTQ+ civil rights bill to the President's desk. And it is delivered to the President's desk with strong bipartisan votes in both chambers. That's worthy. As the Speaker would say, that's an applause line. And everyone in this room and so many other LGBTQ+ leaders around the country have been such a part of this work and are part of this success. The vast majority of Americans, as you know, agree that marriage equality is settled law in this country. And with today's vote, Congress has provided much needed security to same-sex and interracial couples who have built their families and lives around marriage equality. And we hope the day will never come when Obergefell is overturned, but the historic passage of the Respect for Marriage Act shows Congress's commitment to protecting the rights of the American people and their access to marriage equality. So I want to say thank you to everyone who's been part of this work. I want to end with a particular thank you to our speaker, who began her career in the House fighting to help us confront the ravages of the AIDS and HIV pandemic in this country, and is at least ending her speakership with this important success. There has never been, my guess is there never will be, a stronger ally and more effective ally for the LGBTQ plus community in the Congress of the United States than Speaker Pelosi. So we thank you.
Well, I am delighted to be here on this incredible occasion, and I also want to recognize a couple of folks who have joined the stage. Mark Pocan, who's my congressman, so I want to take, as well as majority. Oh my gosh. Barney Frank! Oh my gosh. Okay, another choke up, welling up of the tears moment. David Cicilline has the honor of chairing the Equality Caucus. Barney and I have the honor of having founded it a few years back. But today we are making history, but we're also making a difference for millions of Americans. We're taking a step forward in the fight for equality and ensuring dignity and respect for all Americans. With the passage of the Respect for Marriage Act, we can put to rest the worries of millions of loving couples who are concerned that someday an activist Supreme Court may take their rights and freedoms away. We are giving these loving couples the certainty that their marriages are legal and that they will continue to have the same rights and responsibilities and benefits of every other married couple. We are telling these Americans that we see them and we respect them. On the Senate side, I think we can say we defied political gravity and earned a dozen Republican members' support for marriage equality. Many people are asking what the passage of this historic bill means to me as a member of the LGBTQ plus community. What I said to people who asked me a similar question in 2012 when I was first elected to the Senate still rings true today. I didn't run for the Senate to make history. I ran to make a difference. But the difference today is that we get to do both. We're making history and making a difference for millions of Americans. And next, let's hear from Judiciary Committee Chair Nadler.
Well, thank you very much. This is truly a great and historic moment. When I first introduced the Respect for Marriage Act in 2009, it was seen as fringe legislation that would never see the light of day. To be standing here now, about to send this bill to the President for his signature, would have been unimaginable to most people back then. But thanks to the hard work of the advocates who never wavered and who never lost sight of the goal of achieving marriage equality, as well as the courageous leadership of Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer, we are on the cusp of a great moral victory. I want to thank David Cicilline and the co-chairs of the LGBTQ plus Equality Caucus, the chairs of the Congressional Tri-Caucus, and Hakeem Jeffries for joining me in introducing this legislation in the House, and Senators Baldwin and Collins for everything they did to assure passage in the Senate. It was just reported the other day that there are now more than 1 million same-sex couple households. Many of them are raising children in loving families. This legislation provides the security and the dignity that each one of those families deserve. I am grateful to everyone who helped us get here today, and I look forward to watching President Biden sign this bill into law. And next is Senator Collins.
Last but not least, let me begin my comments today by thanking all of the leaders who have gathered here, but in particular, my partner, Tammy Baldwin, in the Senate. The Speaker reminisced a bit about the repeal of the discriminatory Don't Ask, Don't Tell law. And I am proud to have been the Republican sponsor of repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I'm also proud to have been the Republican sponsor with Tammy of the Respect for Marriage Act. When I think about this bill, I think about how much it matters to people in each of our lives, our family members, our coworkers, our neighbors, our friends. It affects more than 1 million households in this country, but each and every one of us knows someone, has a relative, or are that person who is benefiting from this bill. And that's why it's so important. It's a bill that truly will make a difference to the lives of so many American families. And that's why it matters so much. There are some people who haven't been thanked today. I want to thank the 39 House Republicans and the 12 Senate Republicans, because without their votes, we would not be standing here today. And believe me, Senator Tillis and Senator Portman and I, on the Republican side, worked so hard. On Thanksgiving Day, as I was basting the turkey, I was also texting with them, taking phone calls, to the point where my relatives and my husband said, could you please give it a break just for Thanksgiving? But I couldn't, because it was so important. I also want to thank the group of faith-based organizations that worked so closely with us and endorsed the bill. We've proven that it is not about rights for LGBTQ community versus rights for churches, mosques, synagogues, temples. We can advance both, and that's what this legislation has done today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Collins. Not only were those Republican votes necessary to pass the bill, it makes it even more special that we're doing so in a very strong bipartisan way. Thank you for your leadership, your ongoing leadership from Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Now, in case you are wondering, the bill isn't here. It's coming in a minute. And in the meantime, I just want to acknowledge some of our colleagues who have, see what happens after you pass the bill. There's all this parchment paper. There's a whole process here that usually goes like this, and hopefully it'll be just a moment. But in the meantime, let me acknowledge the distinguished majority leader of the House, Steny Hoyer of Maryland. Tammy acknowledged her congressman, our congressman, Mark Pocan of Wisconsin. I'm coming that. And I know we're all thrilled to see Barney Frank here. Barney, I was chatting with Barney earlier, and we said in the beginning we did the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. But before that, one of the first bills we did, and we would not have been successful without Barney's leadership, sharing his personal story when we had the hate crimes legislation, which was fully inclusive, including LGBT. They just said, you can pass this in a minute if you take out transgender. I said, we won't pass it in 100 years unless we have transgender in there. So thank you, Barney, Frank, for your leadership. Now that I see the bill is arrived and alive, I'll reverse, scale back my next 20 minutes by saying this. I mentioned on the floor Phyllis Lyons and Del Martin, pioneers, icons, and all this. I mentioned Jim Hormel, such a champion, the first openly gay ambassador of our country, appointed by he was appointed by Bill Clinton. But people say to me all the time, it's easy for you to do all of this because you're from San Francisco and people there are so tolerant. I said, don't use the word tolerant. Jackie will attest to this. Tolerant is a condescending word to us. This isn't about tolerance. This is about respect. This is about taking pride. And we all take pride. So, as Senator Collins mentioned, it was, and others have mentioned, they're all of you who made this possible. The inside maneuvering can only go so far without the outside mobilization. But I do, in closing, want to acknowledge some of my constituents and neighbors who were here 3 generations of the Dolby family. Thank you for your leadership and all of that. And now, we will sign a bill and send it to the president's desk. Mr. Schumer, will you join me up here? Trying to make it as big as possible. As we pass the bill around, you notice it's not very large, but it makes a tremendous difference.
I was here for the birth of DOMA, so I am very grateful to be able to be here for the funeral, and it's kind of a New Orleans moment. We are tooting our horns for the funeral, a much happier occasion than the birth. But I just want to say something very important, not just about this bill, but about the job of legislating. I was chagrined to read criticism of Tammy Baldwin before the election for not pressing ahead with this bill to maximize its advantage as a political issue. And Tammy, through her own life experience, understood what troubles this caused for same-sex married couples all over the country. And she understood that resolving those fears was much more important than any political issue. And she stood up, and she was proven right. And I hope people will now take this as an example of responsible legislating, not being panicked by people who have more emotion than intelligence on an issue. And I just want to pay tribute to one of the great legislative achievements I've ever seen, Tammy shepherding this bill through.
Has always been a person the United States. That took courage to run, to win, and she's demonstrated that courage throughout. Here we are. President Biden. Yeah. Senators can hold it. There you go.
Jody, can you send us stuff?
I will totally send this.
That's why we did it.
How you doing, Barney?
Good. My
All
left,
right?
yeah, disc problems on both sides, so I'm not mobile, but otherwise.
Brain, mouth, you tired? You got energy. Very fit.
Yes, Carol.
I'm glad what you said about that.
Oh, yeah.
We got such pressure.
I know that, including from
Oh, from everybody.
That's why I want to tell our friend, what did you call him? Yada, yada. They were the ones, those guys. Shame on them.
That's right. Well, they had no faith.